Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Fringe. I'm Dr. Genevieve Newton. I am the scientific director at Fringe, and I'm here today with Dr. Abby Kramer, who is our medical director. So for those of you that know Fringe, you know that we love supplements, and we have come up with what we call our essentials line, which includes a select handful of supplements that we've determined, for a variety of reasons that we're going to discuss today, are really essential for most people most of the time. So Abby is really the brainchild behind the development of our supplement line. I support her by doing a lot of scientific research and searching and writing and stuff, but I can't take credit for the wizardry that she has performed here. So my job today is actually to ask her questions that will help you guys to understand our rationale, our products, and really just what we do here at Fringe with respect to our essential supplements. So, Abby, to start off, let's go big picture here. Why did we at Fringe get into this supplement business? Why did we start making supplements?
Yes. I mean, I feel like there's so many reasons, but at the core of it, it just became really apparent to me, and I think all of us, and Allison included, um, that like the lid kind of blew off that like, oh my gosh, what can we trust? Like I understood how important hydration was and electrolytes, and that was really the first thing we really started chipping away at. And I'd seen such great patient outcomes in clinic with something as simple as putting them on a daily electrolyte supplement. And it was like, I don't feel awesome about myself or my daughter taking this stuff for 20 years every day. Like there's a few ingredients that I don't love. I don't really know where these are being sourced. I don't really know what type of testing is going on. And so I feel like it was almost out of a necessity that we were like, we need these things and we want cleaner products. So I guess we need to make them because they don't necessarily exist that are fully up to our standards, at least from what we know, right? From not many companies, we'll get into this, I'm sure, publish their testing result and know exactly what they're doing. And so I feel like fundamentally it was like everything we make at Fringe, we're also making it for ourselves because we want more transparency or higher quality or, to understand the process from the ground up. And yeah, we really just wanted to start with the basics. The whole idea behind our first three products, as we call them, the essentials bundle, is that there's a lot of noise, I feel like, in the world today, especially on social media. Like, you need this supplement, you need this protocol, you need this cleanse, you need this detox, this or that. And we really thought long and hard about, okay, what do people actually need? What can we confidently say? This is essential because in our modern world, we are unable to get what we need. No matter how clean you eat, I don't care how clean you eat, right? It's like incredibly hard to get enough magnesium, for example, from food. And so these three products are what we truly believe through like years of formulating and reading and your deep diving, that it's really an essential to must now that we supplement these handful of things. And don't get me wrong, I love other supplements. You should see the shelves at my clinic. It's ridiculous the amount of herbs and all these amazing things we use, but that stuff isn't essential, right? These are things every human on earth basically should be taking most of the time.
Yeah. Well, between you and me and Allison, we have very different, I guess, aptitudes for supplementation. Like you love working with supplements and you're totally comfortable taking supplements. I have this kind of love-hate relationship with them where
Yes.
I buy a lot of supplements and then I send you guys pictures where I've got garbage bags full of them that I'm throwing away because I just can't bear to take anymore. And then Allison just hates taking everything all the time.
You know
I
what?
think
It's
it
good
comes
though.
yeah, it is. It's really good because we have we sort of keep each other in check, and I think what has really helped us kind of as this starting point. Of course, at Fringe, we are going to be developing, and we have a lot of ideas in the future about products that will help people for specific conditions. But we really wanted to start with this foundation, and And us having these different approaches to supplementation really made it so that we could look at the scientific literature. That was my end of things. Your end of things is, I think, probably even more important, coming at it from the clinical perspective, just working with people for over a decade and working with a huge range of supplements, and then getting to know what works for people, what
Mhm.
really does move the needle in terms of helping them to feel better, and not just helping these niche populations of people, what helps really pretty much everyone to feel better. So yeah, and then as our starting point around, okay, we want this to launch as being these foundational supplements, but then getting into the development, we really very quickly realized we need to articulate our core values around
Mhm.
supplements, because
Mhm.
this is going to determine everything that we do from here on in. And we can maybe share some stories
Yep.
about how not having those values in place would have really led us to some very different places. But why don't you tell people what are our core values that we determined around supplements?
Yeah. And this took, I feel like you kind of have to be in the trenches in that process. And as you're going, you're like developing your values. So that's where I'm glad we like really took our time, although it felt like so painfully slow to even get like our first products out to market. It really caused at every point you're like questioning, right? Like, what are we okay with? What are we not okay with? What is our process going to be for testing, for example? So it really comes down to a handful of things. You guys can go on our website, by the way, fringeheals.com. Um, we have under the supplement section a page called Small Scoops Mission, where you guys can read all about this. But first and foremost, we really like to make simple products. There are so many products out there. You turn it over, you look at the supplement facts label, and there's like 50 ingredients and different things. And I've seen this in practice clinically. Less is more. You shouldn't need that many things in a product to move the needle. Simpler is better. So you guys will see our products are very, very minimal. We don't have a laundry list of ingredients, whether they're good health promoting ingredients or not. That's just not our approach. Our approach is like less is more. Clean ingredients. We take a very, very long time to source the cleanest possible ingredients we can find. Organic whenever possible, non GMO whenever possible, food or earth based whenever possible. We don't like to chase trends like this special nano size. I feel like a lot of
Mm,
stuff within the supplement world is almost going more pharmaceutical. It's like the more is better, making everything 10 times more absorbable. And, our kind of ethos at Fringe is really to get back to nature, back to getting these things, including the nutrients and vitamins from our supplementation from the form we are designed to get them from, which is from our food and our water, really, and our
yeah.
soil through the food, right? So we try and do as natural based as possible, as non synthetic as possible. And effectiveness is big, right? That's where kind of our process with making products is I kind of know what I've seen clinically be effective with patients, and then what's so helpful and amazing is then you go and do your deep dives. And, Genevieve is like an expert PhD researcher and goes, reads, 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 reads. And thank goodness, the vast majority of the time she comes back and says, oh, there's really great data behind this. And I'm like, thank goodness, I'm not crazy. What I've seen, it's really validating for me to see that the things I've seen clinically also have been really backed up in the literature that they're also effective. But a lot of what happens in the supplement industry as well is if you're buying more synthetic, more generic products, like you're seeing stuff at CVS or Costco or whatever, not to say everything there is bad, but a lot of stuff is really, really low dose. So, a perfect example of that is vitamin D. If you go to CVS and buy a vitamin D supplement, it might not be in the most absorbable form. It usually is also going to be a really low dosage that probably just won't be effective. And so I see this clinically all the time. Patients are like, I've taken a vitamin D every single day for years. How are my levels still at 30? And then I see the product they're taking and it's like 1,000 IUs. it's just not enough to move the needle, right? So we make stuff in really targeted kind of therapeutic ranges so they'll actually work. And then I would say the biggest thing that's blown the lid off reality for all of us is the transparency in testing. And so this is was like a big, I feel like, moment for us to decide we're going to test everything before and after production. We're going to test for everything possible to test for. And we're going to take it a step further and be super transparent and publish those testing results on our website, which almost nobody does. It's a super risky move, but we all really believe that our customers should have informed choice. They should be able to see the testing results we see and make an informed decision on consuming a product or not consuming a product. And I'm just really hopeful that this trend continues and we kind of start this, that consumers want more transparency now. They want to know what they're consuming, and we don't need to be like hiding things because we do all the proper testing, right? So we know our products are clean, so we're confident putting that out there. But that's a big differentiator, I feel like, for us, is especially the transparency.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't, I think we need to write a little chapter at some point and do a
Hmm.
podcast on all our stories about the points along the line where
Yeah.
we've been presented with choices and that had we not had these values very well established. And I mean, this is where I really give you all the credit. The things that you've seen in practice with respect to the way people are sensitive to things that are generally recognized as safe. There's very little scientific
Give
evidence
an
from strong
example of an
research.
ingredient that falls into
Mm,
that.
citric acid.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's our biggest one, right? Like citric acid is in absolutely
Maltodextrin,
everything. Maltodextrin, it's in
is
absolutely
another one.
everything.
Yeah.
And so, this is the reality. These products, the market is so saturated that there is just this baseline acceptance
Mhm.
across the industry that these are fine. They're great to include. They're neither
Yeah.
here nor there. They're not beneficial, but they're not harmful. And
Yeah.
so you came into it with your practical experiences of kind of seeing that there are some people who don't seem to respond really well to these things.
Mhm.
Certainly, there's emerging evidence about maltodextrin. We have some clarity on that one that's
Well, and
probably
let
not something that
alone
we want.
if it's not in your product in high enough amounts, you don't have to put it on the label. So
Yeah.
that to me is like the worst thing we uncovered, because can you even trust someone's label?
No, you can
Which
only
is
trust a company.
which is
Yeah.
crazy, right? So then people ask me, "How do I know if this is clean? Can you look at this label and tell me?" And I'm like, "I really can't tell you," which is so frustrating and gets me like more fired up than anything. So I just really hope like we're kind of on the forefront, and I do think this is happening because people are now, there's whole social media accounts dedicated to buying a product and sending it out for third party testing to be like, let's see what's really in this. And so it's like only a matter of time. I feel like most companies are going to have to come on board and listen. That's fine. If you include maltodextrin in your product, just put it on the label. And then, this isn't even a discussion.
Yeah, yeah. So the maltodextrin, for people who don't know, is often included in the natural flavors umbrella, and so that's how it typically sneaks into many of the products you're consuming. And if you're only consuming a very small amount occasionally, typically not going to have that much effect on your gut microbiome. It may not be that harmful, but if you're consuming it from all of these different places, day after day
Yeah.
after day after day, that's when we start to see things not being quite as optimal. So what would you, if I were to ask you, like, in the most high level terms, how do you think our supplements are different than from the ones that are on the market? We've talked about our values, but how do how are our supplements unique?
I think there's a few different ways. I would say from like formulation level, if we're starting at the very beginning, we just have a very different approach to making products. What I personally believe, based on what we've seen and learned the past few years, I think most people just go to a supplement manufacturer and just they basically white label um, someone else's product, right? So it's like, oh, we want to make something like a sleep support supplement, and the factory's like, oh, we've made these, 5 different versions in the past that have done really well, and they're like, oh, check, that looks great. Just put a Fringe label on it. Let's start selling it. So I think there's a lot of kind of like copycatting or just making the same, you guys can see this across different supplement brands. They all basically sell the same exact thing. Maybe they change one tiny thing. And we really take the time from the ground up, from each individual ingredient. Where does it come from? Where is it sourced? Let's see the testing. Like building it from scratch, essentially, is kind of what we do. Um, and our average product, I don't know, takes us 2 years,
Oh, yeah.
like an incredibly long time.
Mhm.
And then just the quality, right? So we're just not willing to cut corners. Like we're going through this right now, working on another electrolyte flavor, and it's been a very, very, very long time. And if it's not perfect, we're not going to put it out. And that's really, I mean, it comes down to our values is what makes us different. But I would say the sourcing, the cleanliness, the extensive list we have of things we will not use, which that makes it 1,000 times harder to make products because we are that picky. And then the testing we do, right? There's like, as we've seen, there's different tiers, which obviously the top tier is the most expensive. You can test for everything possible. A lot of people, I think, likely just test for a couple things, like the main big offenders. And then our personal standards for a great example is heavy metals. Um, Standard testing has very different ranges they will accept as being a safe limit on metals. And we really kind of use the most stringent, strict, we want our metals under um, a certain level. So I would say the main thing is just like our standard for quality is what makes us different.
Yeah, I was having a conversation the other day, and I think I finally wrapped my head around why it is that I can honestly say that I believe that we make some of the best, if not the best products
Mhm.
on the market in terms of their quality. And I couldn't understand that for a while. I was like, how can the three of us
No, it still
with
doesn't feel
our
real.
it still doesn't feel real, but it's like, how could we be the ones? Why? What? And it's 2020. When we
Yeah.
started doing this,
Yeah.
it's in the 2020s. Why
Yeah.
is this just happening now? This industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's been around for decades now. Why is it that it took us coming in? And I think the answer is that what I was saying before about these ingredients that got in right from the ground level
Mhm.
of supplement manufacturing that had the designation of being generally recognized as safe.
Mhm.
They've had very little research done on cumulative effects,
Yep.
on additive effects, long-term effects. And I think for most of them are probably neutral in terms of their health effects. Some of them are definitely going to have some level of harm. Most of the
Mhm.
time, it's going to be quite small. So we're not
Mhm.
dealing with things that are necessarily carcinogenic
Yep.
or causing reproductive toxicity that are highly toxic. We're talking about things that are kind of neutral to slightly harmful. But
Mhm.
what we've chosen to do instead is not use those things, and rather than use something that's neutral or just a little bit bad, we use things that actually have health benefits.
Mhm.
So that filler that goes into our supplement will be a prebiotic fiber that feeds the
Yep.
gut bacteria. So
Yep.
we've changed the focus. It's not, there's no acceptance of, oh yeah, these are our inactive ingredients and they don't do anything. It's
Yep.
actually, these are our less active ingredients that
Yep.
also have a biological function. And that's something that I really I just don't see anybody else doing. And I think that makes
Yeah. I
us
mean,
unique. And
I feel like and maybe this just happens in like businesses in general. There just becomes like a handful of years of just like complacency. Like I
yeah,
think about the electrolyte market, right? Like For many, many years, it was like, thank goodness, like a handful of key players came in that certainly made electrolytes that are far better than traditional Gatorade, Powerade, those things we think of that
Yeah.
we all grew up drinking that now we know, like, yikes, really? Right? So there was this whole movement of like, okay, we can make things more keto friendly without sugar. We can use things like stevia. Like, we don't need dyes in our electrolytes, certainly, right? But then I feel like there's a handful of years where we just like coasted and no one really asked questions, which is very strange to me. And so I feel like now, especially the consumers are more driving, like, hey, do we really need this in there? And the answer is no, but it's just really hard to do. It's way harder and it's way more expensive, right? So I feel like now there's new players, including us, coming into the game that are like, "Hey, you actually can flavor stuff with real fruit. Is it a lot harder? Yeah. Are you going to have some more challenges? After what we've experienced, like there's things with supply chain issues and quality. It's like, oh, yeah, this is why people do natural flavors because it's made in a lab, it's stable, it's never going to taste different, right? But it's like, we're so firm in our values that it's like, if we're out for a month because we couldn't find the right, organic fruit that meets our quality, like that's okay with us, right?
Yeah.
Because we could cut corners and put something out there that then is not organic because it's cheaper, but we just won't do that. So it'll be really interesting to see like the next 10 years where
Hmm.
things go.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, let's circle back to our essentials then. So we've laid our
Yep.
foundation and what are our values and how are we
Yep.
different? Our just give us a big picture overview of what we identified and developed as our essentials line.
Yes. So I think a lot of people still think of electrolytes as something you take if you're an athlete, if you're sweating a lot, if you're like doing a sauna, if you're really depleted or like super dehydrated, you take electrolytes. But truly, most of us need more minerals because our soil is really depleted, as is our water. We should get our minerals from our water and from our soil. Minerals are stripped out even to modern, like how we treat our water, but then let alone, I'm sure many of you listening have a great water filter, which, yay, we should be filtering our water. There's lots of gnarly stuff in just tap water. However, then you lose even more of the mineral content. Okay, and then our soils are so devoid of minerals. Yes, even organic, even all of that, unless you could get everything from a regenerative farm, which hopefully one day we're there. Um, we just can't get the mineral content we did 100 years ago from our food. It's just virtually impossible. And minerals, I mean, you can certainly speak to this as well, are cofactors and important for like pretty much every single biological function our bodies do. So it's such a foundational thing. I make sure all my patients, and I think I'm really glad. I feel like the conversation, even online, is starting to shift back more to foundation, which is good. For a while, it was so crazy out there. People were like, I need 85 supplements a day and a 3-hour biohacking routine to like be healthy. And it's like, no, no, take some minerals and get outside in the sunshine, please. So back to basics. We need minerals. So we have our electrolyte mineral mix. Okay, this was like our first product. This is the unflavored version. A big difference here, which I feel like we don't talk about enough, is that it doesn't just have the classics people think: sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium. Not everyone does that either. But we also add trace minerals, which is super, super important. I've seen clinically so many patients feel so much better after upping their trace mineral support. So this is designed, it's unflavored. I put a scoop in my water bottle every single time I fill it up because I have a reverse osmosis water filter in my house. So there's no minerals. So you need to add them back in or your body's going to strip the minerals from your bones and your teeth. And then alongside that is magnesium support. Magnesium is a super, super important mineral we need that also should be in our food and our water and is not so much anymore. And so that's really a standalone supplement most people should be taking every day. It's important for a million things. And then vitamins D and K. Another one that virtually everyone is deficient in. I rarely find someone on blood work that has optimal levels unless they are supplementing. especially in the winter months, but honestly, even in the summer for most people, because we just don't get outside enough to really boost your vitamin D. You need to be outside in direct sunlight with bare skin to absorb it. And so most people, even if they're outside, they have some sort of sunscreen on or a hat, like you're blocking that absorption. So very important. So that's our essentials bundle. It's three things that are very, very hard to get optimal levels in your body on a consistent daily basis without supplementing. So it's really designed that they're all unflavored. You can do a scoop or two of each a day in your water and you're good to go.
Yeah, and that is something else that, no, not for the electrolytes, but for the vitamin DK and for the magnesium, we chose to make powdered
Mhm.
products that allowed us to have that flexibility of adding to food and water. And just, I think in some ways, it was also our own personal preference to just not have.
Mhm.
And it's easier actually to stick with our values because there are more challenges to creating pills,
Flavor.
capsules,
Yep.
flavors,
Yep.
etc. Yeah. So, but we are, for everybody who's in listening, we are actively experimenting with different
Yep.
ways of delivering our products as well. So we started off with our powders, and we love our powders, but probably in the future we will have some other
Yep.
delivery methods that also
And they're
conform to
also
our values.
yes. And they're also great for kids. We
Mhm.
don't talk about this enough either, but it's like kids also need magnesium. They're also incredibly deficient in magnesium, just like us. And most kid focused, kid marketed products are just full of junk ingredients. And it's so frustrating. And we've researched going into like tablets and chewables, and it basically is impossible to make them up to our standards. We would have to compromise and add things we don't love. And so what's nice about like the magnesium powder, for example, we've got kids dosing on the website in the FAQ section you guys can find. But just, third of a scoop of that. Like my daughter has like a protein smoothie most mornings, mix it in there, put it in your kids. I have patients put it in their kids' little pouches they do, or applesauce, or even in water and some juice. And you just know your kids aren't on a daily basis, like we've talked about. It's a cumulative thing. And, it's either like tablets or gummies or liquids full of a bunch of artificial sweeteners, gums, that can just irritate the gut. And so it's just such a simple way to get those like necessary things in your kids.
Yeah, for sure. You have definitely mentioned that we're talking about supplements that it's very hard to get from exposure to the natural world. Do you think that these supplements are essential even if somebody has a super healthy diet and lifestyle? And would there be any exceptions, do you think, or circumstances under which people maybe don't necessarily need all of them?
I don't know, 99% of people do. I mean,
I agree.
there's the couple unicorn patients I've seen with vitamin D. That would be the one. And we say this in our
Yeah.
blogs, on our social media. Please get your levels checked once to twice a year. I like my patients to check their levels in the summer and in the winter. Some patients genetically absorb and hold on to vitamin D beautifully. And in the summer months, they don't need it. If they're outside enough, like if they're genetically blessed, so many people have a genetic SNP, it's called, on the VDR receptor. I have it, where you do not absorb vitamin D well, even from the sun. So for me, I have to supplement vitamin D even in the summer. It doesn't matter if I'm a soccer mom and I'm at tournaments 4 times a week, my levels are still going to not be that great, right? So it's really good to have that information about yourself so you know where you're at. So I do have a handful of patients that in the summer months, so maybe up to like October or so, they don't need vitamin D. Their levels are at like 65 without supplementation, but those are unicorns. For the most part, people still need that. For the most part, we spend too much time inside, not
Oh,
enough
yeah.
time outside consistently, right? To get our levels and like where you and I live, practically at the North Pole. We're not even at a high enough latitude like to get enough for a lot of the year, right? And so get your levels checked. It's a really simple, easy, cheap thing to ask for from your primary care doctor. Or now there's places online you can just go order it, and you can do like a finger prick at home and send it in. To really, you don't know unless you're testing that one where you're at. And then you can cater your dosage accordingly, right? For me, I take a much higher dosage in the winter. I'm not just taking 1 scoop a day of our vitamin D to get my levels up where to a more optimal range. But I would say with the minerals and magnesium, no. I mean, there was that study where like the magnesium content in spinach, was it, right? Was like 90% reduced from
Yeah.
what it used to be.
Yeah.
And
And so
so,
when you're looking at, like, if you go online and you input, you're tracking all your nutrients, or you're using Chronometer, the different apps, and you're getting a magnesium measurement for the food that you're eating, it's not accurate anymore.
yeah,
So it's
correct.
telling you that that's what was in there when that food was assayed many years ago. Those
Yeah.
databases were created many years ago. So people actually have no idea how depleted they are in minerals today.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
magnesium is like the worst one for sure.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I'm like, when are they going to update that? We need to take
Mm.
a bunch of food and send it to a lab somewhere. Be like,
It
tell
would
us
be
how
an
much
interesting,
is.
yeah,
It would
yeah,
be
that would be
super
a
interesting,
very
but
good
it's
test to
only
do.
going down, and like,
Oh
yes,
yeah.
if you could get your vegetables from a local regenerative place, then those contents are going to be much higher because regenerative agriculture literally puts the minerals back into the soil and is like the healthiest you can get. But it's hard to find that, right? Like, that's
Hmm.
probably not what most people are consuming consistently. So, yeah, super important. There's not many people that wouldn't need that daily.
No, I don't think so. I mean, you could think of that there would be the odd person who lives in a very remote, rural kind of, has access to spring water that doesn't
Yeah.
need filtration.
Yeah.
They probably would be okay with not, they would certainly be okay with not remineralizing their water. But I mean, so few people have
Hmm.
access to
Well,
that.
and like, what
And
percentage of our minerals, you would know this better than I would, should come from water versus food? Like, those people are still going to
mhm.
have gaps from their food,
Yeah,
even if
yeah,
their
they will.
water's
And
great.
yeah, and so the mineral intake from water is very low, but it's not nothing. And
Yeah.
it's low for most minerals except for calcium and magnesium. For calcium and magnesium, historically, if you look at the data, that can be upwards of 20%. Depending on the water source
Wow.
and the population. Yeah. And this, when I learned that, it solved a mystery to me, which was always wondering, why do people require, based on the studies that
Hmm.
we have, such a high level of, or relatively high level of calcium, um, considering that the only food that contains high levels of calcium there aren't very many, right? Most of them are
Right.
dairy foods. So I couldn't understand, where was this mineral coming from? And certainly part of it could be explained by the fact that we were much more active, and so our bone density was much stronger without the need for minerals.
Extra.
Also,
Yeah.
also turns out that it's a bit controversial, calcium intake recommendations, much more so than people are led to believe. But when you realize that our historical exposure, that about 20% of it did come through water,
It's
then
a
you
lot.
start to go, oh, okay, so that's how people were getting it, who were,
Yeah.
in these vegetarian societies, et cetera.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, there's a decent amount of calcium in like leafy greens too, right? But
Yes,
it's also the
yes,
question of
certain.
like, how much of that are you eating and how absorbable is it? Because then the
Mhm.
people that put spinach in their smoothies every single day end up with kidney stones.
Mhm. Yep, yep. So that raises the question. We're talking about these three supplements in as these separate products. If somebody were to ask you, should I take these together? Do they
Hmm.
interact? Like, what are the relationships between them? Or let's say, I spend a ton of time outside. I don't think I'm I'm not worried about vitamin D. Is there
Mhm.
any rationale for or interactions, interconnectedness between these minerals and
Definitely.
vitamins?
For sure. Because, I mean, DK is the perfect example, and then that works alongside magnesium as well. But vitamins D and K, a lot of people out there are saying that K really helps deabsorption, which isn't exactly true,
No.
but they need to be taken together. And so I have a handful of patients in practice that their vitamin D levels are great. I absolutely have them on a vitamin K2 supplement though, because no one has enough K2. And K2 is incredible, does many things, but its correlation with vitamin D is that vitamin D like frees up calcium in the system. Vitamin K2 is really cool. It goes and scavenges that free calcium and puts it where it needs to go. So if you don't have enough K2, which dietarily is incredibly challenging to get, which where did that come from previously? That's a sidebar, but K2 is really important because if you guys know anyone that has had things like kidney stones, bladder stones, even like joint pain and stuff, people can get these like buildup in their joints that can be super painful. And even things like atherosclerosis, it's like calcium deposits in weird places in the body without vitamin K2. And so you need that K2 to go put the calcium where it belongs. And there's awesome studies about vitamin K2. Even, I mean, it's super important for heart health. Pretty much any woman 30s and above should be on a K2 supplement, even if they're not on D, in my opinion, for heart health and bone health. So they work together. And then magnesium is super important. So you'll see a lot of people online talking about if you're taking magnesium, you also need to be taking D and K and vice versa, which is true. So these minerals, I mean, obviously, it's like the body was perfectly designed. Hello. We
Mhm.
need all of them together. So we can't just look at it as like you replace one thing. We really need this full spectrum of vitamins and minerals all working together and complementing each other. Or things can go haywire because we're not meant to just have super crazy high levels of vitamin D and low levels of other things. So they all should be taken together. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, obviously why we formulated our vitamin D along with vitamin K. And um,
Hmm.
I think the market certainly has a preponderance now of vitamin D K supplements, like in
Hmm.
combination. But I remember
Yep.
at the outset when we started seeing all these supplements for vitamin D, most of the time it was just vitamin D by
Yeah.
itself. And
Yeah.
and as you said, it can get deposited in different places. One of the primary locations is in the cardiovascular system. So you end
Yep.
up with deposits in the arteries and atherosclerosis, and it's a risk factor for heart attacks,
And then
etc.
let alone all these people, so many people are taking calcium supplements, pounding
Oh,
them for
oh
bone
my
quality.
goodness.
It's still so widely recommended and horrible forms that are not absorbable at all. Like just cheap
Yes.
synthetic, like you're basically taking a chalk supplement
Yeah.
every single day, and then it can cause other issues. So I highly encourage people to have this discussion with your healthcare provider. If you are doing that, especially women as they age for bone quality, are
Hmm.
really often encouraged to start taking calcium supplements
Hmm.
without any awareness of the vitamin D conversation, vitamin K conversation for bone health and bone quality. And um, in my opinion, that and minerals is actually really what's needed to increase bone health instead
Yeah.
of just like pounding calcium.
Yeah, and calcium, you want to make sure that when you do take a supplement, if you are supplementing in any way, that it's not a really high dose at any given point in time. I would never personally go above 250 milligrams,
Hmm.
maybe 300. It should be the equivalent of what's in a serving of calcium-rich food. And
Food.
then, yeah, and so if you weren't consuming any calcium-rich food and you did want to supplement more than at 250 or 300 milligrams a day, then you would split that up and you would do it at
Yep.
2 or 3 times across the day to mitigate that. So you've used this stuff in clinic and you've
Hmm.
been doing this for many, many years. What are some of the things that you see people experiencing as benefits from taking supplements that include D and K and magnesium and electrolytes?
Okay, let's go one by one. I think that'll be easier. So with electrolytes, myself, I'm not someone that's actually super sensitive to supplements. I usually take all these things and feel nothing, to be honest, but like I know they're good for me, so I take them. Some patients like feel stuff immediately, right? Like they'll take an herb and be like, "Oh my gosh, my anxiety's gone." I haven't personally been like that. The one supplement I will say I immediately feel a difference with, and this has been the case for 15 years, is electrolytes. I take electrolytes, I immediately feel clearer, more energy, brain fog gone, uh, get less headaches. I definitely am like a kind of dehydration headache prone person that like does not happen if I'm taking an electrolyte supplement a day. So I just knew that was something people respond so well to and it's so simple. So for electrolytes, yeah, I would say recovery, like muscle tension and soreness, headaches, brain fog, energy are probably the biggest thing I see with electrolytes. Some people also notice a big improvement in their skin.
Hmm,
Because think about anything that dehydration can cause, electrolytes can
right.
help,
Yeah.
right? So a lot of people are so chronically dehydrated and they drink a lot of water. That's the thing people need to understand. Like, I will have patients that are like, I drink 120 ounces of water a day and I'm always thirsty and still feel dehydrated. That person is mineral deficient. Take it to the bank. They're not getting enough minerals, so they're not using their water, so it just runs right through them. Our body needs the minerals to hold on to the water and be hydrated. So, super low lift, easy thing, great bang for your buck. Magnesium is another one that if you are magnesium deficient, you almost will always feel a difference when you start supplementing magnesium. And the big buckets for me for magnesium are anxiety and stress can really support that, especially one of the forms we have in ours, which is magnesium glycinate. It's really great at helping people feel more calm, less anxious, muscle soreness and tension, and joint pain. Magnesium can help a ton with. So, if you're the type of person that holds just a lot of physical tension in your body, magnesium can help that a ton. And then sleep. Probably the biggest testimonial we get for our magnesium is people are like, "Oh my gosh, I got the best night's sleep ever when I started taking that product." Um, so great for that. I mean, you've written about this extensively in blogs. There's like 800, processes in the body magnesium supports. Like it's also amazing for heart health. Anyone who has any type of heart issues should definitely take magnesium every day. It's amazing for your heart. But that would I say the big buckets people notice right away. Stress and anxiety, muscle tension, sleep. Try magnesium. Oh, and this is another one. I just posted about this. An amazing research study on like PMS and menstrual symptoms and magnesium. These women took between 150 to 300 milligrams of magnesium. I'm sure it was like a crappy form too daily just during the luteal phase of their cycle. So from after ovulation till when their cycle started, insane positive results. Less cramping, mood swings. So it's like, man, are so many women that suffer every month purely just magnesium deficient. And that's why they're so worth a try, guys. If that's you, take a scoop or two of Fringe magnesium. And that was just during the luteal phase. Do it your whole cycle and see what happens. But that kind of goes back to that like cramping, muscle tension, that world of things. And then vitamin D, I mean, go back and listen to our episode on seasonal depression, seasonal affective disorder. Um, Man, I've seen so many things fixed by vitamin D, and it's such a missed thing, and it's so simple. Chronic pain, chronic inflammation, people that have been diagnosed with fibromyalgia literally just get their levels up and it's gone. I had a patient that crippling postpartum anxiety and depression had her levels checked. Like, this is what makes me like so honestly angry. Like, missed for months by her doctors. Her levels were 12.
Mm,
Think that's going to affect how you feel? Literally, like a week into, now I put her on an incredibly high dose, but she emails me and is like, I'm better. And it's so simple and so inexpensive. And, we're going to put her on like 4 different medications.
Yeah.
And so it's for mood, for immune, if you're like the type that's like, I get sick all the time or my kids get sick all the time. Like I said, joint pain, inflammation is huge with vitamin D, autoimmune stuff. It's like the powerhouse for your immune system to work as it should. So
Hmm.
anything that relates to that, vitamin D can support, and great data on it for seasonal affective disorder. If you're the type of person that just, gets like those winter blues and you don't have the same motivation you do in the winter and struggle mentally, definitely get your levels checked and supplement accordingly, because a good percentage of that could just be that your vitamin D levels are so low.
Yeah, I think what most people don't realize, and it's totally understandable because unless you study nutrition, I mean, even if
Mhm.
you study medicine without nutrition,
Yep.
this connection is not made. And the connection
Yep.
is that vitamins and minerals are essential, meaning we can't survive without them. Some of them we will
Yes.
die very quickly, some we will die slowly, but
Yes.
they're needed for our survival. But what they're doing in our body, they're not providing us with calories, right? The way that
Yep.
some of the macronutrients are. They are making it so that the processes, the trillions of processes that happen in our body on a cellular and molecular level every moment of every day are able to carry out. That's what
Mhm.
is these are the things that are the machinery and
Run
the
everything.
substrates. They run
Yes.
everything. They make it
Yes.
all happen. And so when you don't like that list that you just rhymed off, there were dozens of clinical outcomes that you've observed, right? And you could have kept going. And so it
Mhm.
really depends on, you're going to see a lot of inter-individual variability with respect to responses to supplementation. But that's just because they do so many
Mhm.
different things in everybody's body. And really, this is why we've come up with this foundational line of essential supplements um, to get people the things that are so difficult to get, regardless of whether you have a healthy diet or lifestyle. Um, but as a final thought, I want to kind of challenge you to think about. So we've talked about how people are inundated with all of these ideas about supplementation. You're hard pressed to find somebody today who's interested in their health that doesn't supplement with things.
Mhm. Mhm.
How would you like people to think differently about supplementation than kind of the general attitude that we have right now?
I want people to think about supplementation from a much more foundational perspective. And if you haven't nailed the foundation, don't go searching out in the crazy weeds yet, because establishing a foundation, and listen, this isn't to say don't go eat all the healthy foods first. Yes, still eat all the vitamin, nutrient rich, health promoting foods. You can't out supplement that. That's not what this is about. But the foundation, which is eating clean food, drinking clean mineral rich water, getting sleep, getting sunshine, taking care of yourself, supplementing basics that we know we need and are deficient in, and see what that does. That to me is like the 80%, right? There's like the 80-20 rule that's present everywhere. Okay. That's 80% of most of people's issues. And I've seen this in practice again and again and again. And people are buying some crazy liver protocol and some parasite thing and some this and some that. And I use those things with patients too, don't get me wrong. But we're starting with the foundation because, like that story I just talked about with the woman with vitamin D. Okay, I could put her on a bunch of herbs and things that can help like boost your mood, but that is just like a step away from the pharmaceutical approach, which is just to suppress symptoms
Mhm.
and not actually get to the root cause, which is if you've got severe like vitamin, mineral deficiencies and you fix that, then it's done, right? You shouldn't have to take, I'm trying to think of an example, you shouldn't have to take ashwagandha every day forever to feel normal, right? And that's an amazing tool. And I use ashwagandha with my patients, right? This isn't me like bad talking that. But again, setting that foundational approach first instead of just looking for a bunch of like natural band-aids is what I see a lot of people are doing, right? So it's certainly
Yes.
better to reach for the ashwagandha or reishi or whatever than to go full-blown pharmaceutical and like, then be dealing with side effects. And I would encourage people to get back to the basics, which is a lot more difficult and not sexy, right? To be like, okay, I got to get it together and go to bed earlier. Like most people know when they tune in with themselves what probably needs to be adjusted in their lifestyle to help them feel better. And it usually goes back to all the basics.
Yeah, I absolutely could not agree with that more. And so I would say then clearly we have a parting message for people, which is um our message at Fringe is really always to get back to nature and the
Hmm.
supportive processes that we know are tried and true. And now we're in an environment where we actually have to do the same thing with supplementation. That there are some
Yep.
things that we just simply are not able to get for a variety of reasons. Those foundations met through the traditional routes, and so we have supplements on top of that that we now need to incorporate. And then going forward from there, once you've addressed those things, that's when you can start layering
Yep.
on your additional therapies, which we have wonderful, new research all the time on lots of different things that we can do. But that term that you just used, the natural band-aids, that's a really important one, I think, because people don't often think about what we're doing when we take
Hmm.
something, whether it is a drug or a natural supplement. Are we trying to just get rid of those symptoms, or is the thing that
Yep.
we're taking targeting the symptoms only, or are they also looking at getting to that foundational level of supporting the body to do what it knows how to do,
Yep.
unless something really bad has
Yep.
happened? Yeah. All
Totally.
right. Well, we have lots more to talk about in terms of our supplements, but that will be for another podcast at a different time.
Yes.
So thank you, everybody, for joining us on The Fringe, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.